Testing. 1, 2. Testing. Let's see if this thing's working. Ooh, thanks, guys. We've got a full 62 subscribers. Big milestone for me. Thank you very much. Let's post this link in the Discord. Cool, there we go. Is that all sent up? Right, so first thing we're going to be covering is the leadership for... Where am I going? Where am I going? Here I'm going. The leadership for Ogres and Cathay. We'll start off with Cathay, because C comes before O. That's not a theme I'm going to keep up, though. Starting off, the Lord Magistrate. Commonly known by a lot of people, this is probably the worst Lord in the game, currently. This guy is just awful. His melee stats are abysmal. The abilities he gives, where he inspires units around him, those are temporary. If those were permanent, I could see him getting a lot more use. But those are just short 60-second, no, even 30-second abilities that increase accuracy and reload skill. And for how expensive he is, that's really all he gives. He gives this like very small direct damage. I've only used this guy once, so forgive me for not knowing him in and out. But he's just not. He's not good. His health is abysmal. He gives a harmony amplifier, which is the same thing that air balloons give. His stats are awful. He only has 20 armor. His health is really low. And when it comes to putting him on mounts, you can put him on a horse, which is like probably the more ideal, or you can put him on a sky lantern if you just want to make him absolute hot garbage in melee and force him to always be flying. And for that price as well, he's awful. He's just really, really bad. Like even if you took off everything he has on him, 900. That's the same price as a regular sky lantern. And frankly, I wouldn't waste my Lord slot ever on this guy, no matter how cheap I can get a sky lantern for. So yeah, just long story short, don't bring this guy. Just don't even. Maybe one day he'll have improvements given to him, like maybe there'll be a new mount that's added for Cathay one day. But as it stands, this guy's just hot garbage. Let's see here. Next up, we have the two dragon-blooded sorcerers. These are the generic caster lords for Cathay. There's one for Yang and there's one for Yin. I won't go too much into the laws. I'm trying to save all that for a separate video. But just as it stands, Yin is usually better than Yang. But apart from that, they're identical, obviously. They're pretty solid stat-wise. They have magical attacks, which is nice, and you can put them on a Jade Longma, which is basically a Pegasus, and it gives them good stats, good armor. And they still keep the harmony amplifier as well around them. That on top of being a caster that can fly around a Pegasus has always been good. They have some pretty good abilities, or items even. Jade Amulet is a nice boost whenever casting, which is pretty much constantly because they're a caster, to win some magic. And Scales of the Celestial Court is good against anything that isn't demons, basically. 75% physical resistance is like old Kemler's cloak used to be. It's really, really good against ogres and mostly Cathay. Really big air resistance, and frankly, pretty decent lord overall. People often look at the legendary ones, but I'd say Dragon-blooded sorcerer are probably the second best for Cathay, and definitely probably the most consistent. Like you bring these guys against any faction, they'll perform pretty well. Typically, you always bring them on the Jade Longma just because it's so much better to move around with, and the abilities and such really just depend on what you're facing. You almost always want to bring the Jade Amulet if you're planning on having your lord stay alive. And of course, spells would cover in a separate video. Looking now at Miao Ying, the cheaper legendary lord of the two. She, of course, has her dragon transformation, where she can become a big scary dragon. And I believe that her, Zhao Ming, and Terracotta Sentinels are the only source of terror for the Cathay roster, so keep that in mind. This is the only way you're going to be scaring enemies. She also has Wrath of the Storm, which is an AoE ability, where she can increase melee attack, give immunity to psychology, and magic attacks. So of course that's very focused to dealing with demons with their physical resistance and stuff. You can't take that ability off, unfortunately, because obviously against some factions like Kislev it's kind of useless, or ogres especially, it's not very good. Well, immunity psychology is nice, but this is mainly focused for demons ability, but it is a bound one though, you can't take it off. It should be noted that when she's transformed into a dragon, she can only use spells from the Law of Yang, I believe. She can't use any other life spells, because she does come with half a spellbook of life and half of yin, not yang, sorry. And that's really powerful. It's one of her main selling points, is the fact that she can use Earthblood and Regrowth. Flesh to Stone, not very good against demons in the current meta because, you know, they all do magic damage. But Earthblood and Regrowth, really nice healing spells, really nice to pair with 2 Terracotta Sentinels. That's like the ultimate pairing to take out a good Khorne roster. Just bring Miao Ying, 2 Terracotta Sentinels, and for some reason you can heal them with Earthblood. Don't ask me why, you just can. And she also gets Life Bloom because she has Lore of Life with her. Mastery of the Elemental Winds, so she gets more powerful intensity spellcasts. Disdain of Dragons, -8 melee attack to all the people around her. Really just a really solid Lord. I don't think there's much of a reason why you wouldn't bring Miao Ying in any matchup particularly. She also gives a Harmony amplifier of 100% as opposed to the 50% that the other 3 live. The same with Zhao Ming. But she's just really strong. Her stats are really good just as it is baseline. You don't have to worry about it being really squishy on foot, but when you turn her into a dragon, she's even stronger. She gets AP and Terror. She's just really strong. Probably, I'd say, the best Lord in the Cathay roster. Looking on to Zhao Ming. Zhao Ming, unfortunately, doesn't see that much use compared to his sister? Cousin? I don't know the relation exactly. Something like that. He, of course, can turn into a dragon, and I believe he is a better, just stat-wise, dragon than Miao Ying. I could be wrong there. I haven't used him as much as Miao Ying, and I haven't looked that bit deeper into the stats. He also has Master of Alchemy, which lets him imbue friendlies nearby with magical attacks. That is also a bound ability, you can't take that off of him. Oh, you can take that one off of him. But you can't take that one off Miao Ying. I don't get this. But that is, again, something you focus for against demons because it imbues the magical damage. He also comes with Warding Iron, which is a constant ward save random of plus 5% physical resistance. Twin Sister. Yeah, that probably works. They don't look anything alike, but I'd believe it. So yeah, he comes with the Law of Metal and the Law of Yang, which, to put it mildly, is a lot worse than Law of Life and Law of Yin. Again, we won't go too deep into the spells, but the reason why his twin sister, is brought more than him is mainly because she has access to just Law of Life and Law of Yin, which are just which she just has better spells overall. Like, this guy has way too many damaging spells. But of course, Plague of Rust, Final Transmutation, those are nice spells. The Yang ones are hit and miss sometimes. I really just, like, it just doesn't see as much use and utility as the healing can. And there's not any amazing combo you can have with him other than the fact that he can provide Plague of Rust, and of course a lot of the Cathay roster doesn't have Armor Piercing. But in the same breath, I think Alchemist also gets Plague of Rust. Yeah, Alchemist does as well. So I'd probably just bring an Alchemist hero if you really want to Plague of Rust down the enemy. In terms of everything else, he doesn't actually get an item, which is just sad. Neither does Miao Ying. Don't know why. Maybe one day they will. And he's very similar stat-wise to Miao Ying. I think he's just slightly stronger in terms of the dragon form. Apart from that, he is just a slightly worse version of Miao Ying, and as a result, he's also just worse than the Yin sorcerers, frankly, because he's more expensive as well, which is the weird part. Yeah, he'd probably be my second worst lord. He's not an overly bad lord. He's just bad when you compare him to the other 3, especially. Magister Lord is just awful. Please, only bring this guy if you're memeing. Seriously memeing. Onto the heroes. The Cathay, bit different in terms of they don't have a generic version of any of their lords. They have 2 completely new lords, or heroes even. They have the Alchemist, which can give nice buffs to... They're single use, but they are pretty nice buffs, like 90 armor or 40 melee attack. That's pretty good. It is only 1 use, so typically not very good in those long fights like fucking Dominations are. Enchanted Metallurgy. Magic attacks, always nice. If we click him up here, actually, so we can see what's removable. Yeah, the Alchemist has a full Law of Metal. So again, you're getting access to that Law of Metal with Cathay, but only via hero, not via Lord. Which, I mean, maybe one day we'll see an Alchemist Lord, but as it stands, you have to bring an additional hero on top of your... Let's face it, you're bringing a caster as your Lord as well, because you're not bringing the Lord Magistrate. Which can obviously have a bit of a contrast. Though it does work quite nicely with some of Cathay's roster, because some of them have the Mastery of the Elemental Winds, which means if you have 2 or more, it amplifies spell damage and spell effectiveness. It's of course very nice. Looking at the Astromancer, he also comes with the Mastery of the Elemental Winds, so again, it's okay to bring a caster hero and a caster lord in Cathay because they have that bonus to spell effectiveness. The what is it? Astromancer comes with the. Oh my god, I forgot what this law's called. There's 3 like I think this is Law of High. I think it's Law of High. It's high magic, I think. So all the high spells, none of which suit. Chain Lightning's nice. Wind Blast, okay. I mean, getting into spells again, but Law of High wasn't the best laws of magic. Not the most utility out there or anything too standout-ish. I would more often than not just bring an Alchemist because Law of Metal has more good spells in it, in my personal opinion. The Astromancer does come with a few items, some spell resistance, melee defense. Yeah, I know you can hear me. I'm glad it's working. I'm glad somebody confirmed how the audio is. Law of Heaven, that's the one. What's High? Is High like the rip-off one? I think High's the rip-off version of... It's like what the High Elves have. High, Heaven, there's like 4 different ones. They all sound the same. You have High, you have Heaven, you have Light, and the other ones, I can't remember them all. We'll get onto magic some other time. Also have Rolling Skies, which is also probably one of the worst casting effects in the game. Because it only affects flying units. Of course, maybe against Furies you could argue it, but it only affects them while they're flying. So just land, Lamau. Items, spell resistance, melee defense, constant area of effect. It's okay. I mean, he is a caster, so you don't want to keep him in, melee. Cloak of Pomei. I think I pronounced that right. He gets a additional power recharge rate as long as he's outside of melee. So kind of contradicting there. This one you want you to be close to the fighting to give that spell resistance and melee defense. This one's to be far away from it because it only activates when you're outside of melee. So bit of a weird combination there. Yeah, Mazdamundi and the High Elves have the high one. They have Apotheosis here. But doesn't Mazdamundi also have Comet of Cassandra? They tend to share a lot of spells. It confuses me. Brain Hurt. I don't play those bad factions anyway. Lizardmen 2. High Elves 2. I only play Zinch and Vampire Coast. For mounts, Woozing Compass. I think we've discussed how bad the Woozing Compass is, but it's better on the Astromancer that is standalone. And I think is it on or off? No, it's just constantly. These guys also produced a Harmony amplifier of 25%. Harmony recently got a range increase, so all these Harmony amplifiers that Cathay leadership gets, pretty good. But it also just amplifies the reason why you'd bring a Legendary Lord over the basic ones, because he has 100% bonus to that amplifier, which is just 50. That is it for the Cathay leadership. Now we get to look at the Ogre Kingdom's leadership. Similarly to the Cathay roster, the Tyrant is probably the worst of the Ogre roster lords. He is just a generic melee lord. At least he's an Ogre, so he's better than the Magistrate Lord. But overall, like his, you can put him on a mount. No, you can't even put him on a mount because I thought you used to be able to put him on a stun. I'm thinking of things. He does get snacks, so he has regeneration, which is nice. I'll give him that. He also has a leadership debuff with an interesting name. Greedy Fists increases cooldown to any enemy heroes and lords he's nearby. Thunder Mace, nice explosion. He's nothing too special. He is only the worst lord because the other one's actually pretty solid. This guy is kind of solid to be honest as well. There's definitely reasons why you want to bring him. Maybe you're bringing him because he has regeneration. That's the main standout thing he has, really. But there is plenty of healing available to the Ogre roster, so it's not too standoutish, honestly. But, worst to the best, so he's not too bad. Scrag the Slaughterer used to be the most OP meta choice, but that was back when Gorges were OP in meta. Now, because Gorges are really not very good, some might say they're even bad, his special, unique thing, his item, Cauldron of the Great Maw, is obviously a lot worse because it only affects Gorges. It doesn't even affect himself, I'm pretty sure. That has definitely brought him down quite a peg. He does get Law of the Maw, which I think is a pretty good law. He also gets extra ingredients, but I'm pretty sure that's the same for the generic casters as well. So really, realistically, when you're comparing him, we'll get onto the Slaughtermasters, but realistically, it's just stat differences. It's the fact that he's a bit meatier, and he has more damage output, but he's not as tanky because he doesn't have the the bronze shield or the armor. But going on to Scrag first, then we'll go over to the comparison there. No, Greasus even. Scrag Greasus. He has 2 legendary items. Cathay legendary lords don't even get 1. This guy stole both of them, apparently. He's got damage resistance plus 5% and immunity psychology AoE constantly. That is a pretty strong one, especially because, surprisingly enough, not a lot of Ogre units have immunity psychology. Scepter of the Titans makes him hit really hard, although he is a bit slow, so if you pop this, whatever you're fighting can just run away. It's mainly his speed that lets him down. If it wasn't for, if he was like faster, or just like even if he had more mass, he has a bit of an issue pushing through infantry. It's just that he's a bit too slow. Like I would have liked to see him on that big mound of Noblars riding around the place, but instead he got like a mobility scooter, and it doesn't do him any favors. He has Horde Master as well. The whole thing about him is it gives some nice AoE leadership and defense buffs. He also gives him a nice hex there. Everyone has a price, has that anytime. He's just kind of has to sit there. And if something happens to come by him, he'll hit it pretty hard if it is an infantry. If he gets swamped by like a halberd infantry, which you'll typically face as Ogre Kingdoms, he will melt fairly quickly. But he has magic attacks, nice against demons, good against like bloodletters and unclean ones and stuff like that. But again, he is just a bit too slow, frankly. Like Scrag is just so much easier to push through, and he's so much faster as well. Yeah, light Ogre Thoric. That sounds about right. Except when he doesn't even get runes. At least runes are cool. He just gets some nice leadership buffs. Oh yeah, Thorgrim even. Yeah, more or less. Yeah, if I compare him with Thorgrim, Thorgrim was notoriously bad. This guy's better because he has AP. For some reason Thorgrim didn't have AP. If I remember rightly. I'm thinking of the Rune Lord. Either way, this guy's better than Thorgrim. He's still not great though, and especially when you compare him. He also doesn't have a Law of Magic, so you're forced to bring a caster as well on top of him. But I suppose if you're bringing a Fire Belcher because you want the Law of Fire, then you bring Greasus. Slaughter Masters. Looking at these guys have, you know, ogres, but they're casters. They have Law of Beast and Law of the Maw access to them. In my opinion, Law of the Maw is just better, but you know, up to whatever you're fighting. Belly Slapper, -8 melee attack, constant AoE, which is always nice. He also gets the extra ingredients, which is a regeneration to magic that recharges when he's in melee. Bloody Cleaver is also nice because it replenishes. It gives him regeneration, which the Tyrant has. He has to be in melee for it, but it's pretty nice regeneration anyway. And he has Greedy Fist, the same as the Tyrant does as well. Which just because of all that, he's just better than the Tyrant. Like sure, stat wise, he's worse. It's not that bad. Like it's the melee attack is the main difference. But he actually has more melee defense than the Tyrant, so he lasts longer, which means that regeneration comes more into play. And of course, he's a caster as well. When you compare him with Scrag, you do start to see, like he's more expensive, but Scrag has surprisingly better stats mostly. It's just that he doesn't have as much armor and he doesn't have that bronze shield. And of course, he doesn't come with those extra abilities and items available to him. He just comes with what is now a bad item and his abilities. So when you pick between Scrag and the Slaughtermaster, it's like you can go either way. It's quite close, honestly. It just depends on whether or not you want someone that does more damage to infantry, because Scrag does have obviously that nice +20 bonus versus infantry. Onto the heroes. The Hunter is, of course, just a real strange one. You don't see many hunters really. They're like, you maybe think like Witch Hunter in Empire, but he's pretty different. He's a big old anti-large, but the thing is, on foot he's an anti-large, big javelin thrower. You've seen that sort of thing before. He's like a Witch Hunter, but he's an ogre, so he's bigger. But it's really when you put him on your Stonehorn that you just get a much nicer version. You get this throwing a missile that has anti-large of, I think it's pretty big if I'm right. Yeah, 100, so 100 extra damage versus large stuff. Armor piercing, hits pretty hard, and it's nice just to poke and prod with. And then you also put him on a Stonehorn, which is a large anti-infantry, really big health, 10,000 health, with 110 armor. Just a big, huge battering ram. And with some of the items and abilities that the Hunter has, like Loner, which means he gets +12 leadership as long as friendly units aren't nearby, which is really easy to achieve with a Stonehorn. You just run away, and you just keep running away, and you just run through the enemy units until you're far enough away that you get a huge leadership buff, and you get some speed bonus as well. Crippling Throw is okay. I'd recommend only really trying to use this if you're like on foot, because it tends to be a bit awkward to fire on a Stonehorn, especially if you're near some enemies, because you have to be out of melee to use it. The Noblar Thief Stone is quite amusing to use with the Stonehorn. It grants damage, resistance, and stalk, and unspottable, so long as he's outside of melee. So you can pop this to make a Stonehorn invisible, which is always funny to think about. And Bang Stick is a breath, but it really does very little damage. It only does 16 damage, and none of that is AP. It's like, this is okay against really, really lightly armoured infantry. Maybe like some archer unit, but I don't think it's worth bringing. But as a whole, like if you drop everything off the hunter, he goes down to 1,900, which is cheaper than the Stonehorn with a harpoon launcher, which is pretty much the same effect. The harpoon launcher just has some more range to it, so it's more like a Bastildon. But the hunter, of course, has extra leadership, and he has all his bonuses. He has items and abilities available to him that the regular Stonehorn can't. So as a whole, whenever you want to bring a Stonehorn, just bring a hunter on one. Butchers, these aren't nothing really to write home about. These are just smaller versions of the Slaughtermasters. They come with Rune of the Maw, which grants some spell resistance. It's fine, I guess. They get extra ingredients as well. And they get Maw Shard, which grants some spell mastery, but it does damage to themselves, so it's not great. It's alright. That goes for both of them. You just get Maw and Beast. The standout caster, really, if you're bringing a hero caster, is you're probably bringing the Firebelly. This guy is the only source of fire and magic damage, I think, in the entire roster, besides Greasus himself, which is really important because he also can give, because he has Law of Fire, he gets Flaming Sword of Ruin. So if you're having struggle against like this will probably be more when you get like ethereal units in Immortal Empires, but when you're struggling against those really big physical resistances, this guy can provide magic attacks where the rest of your roster has none. He can also provide fire damage, which is of course very good against healing factions like Ogres or like Nurgle. So keep that in mind. He also comes with a slew of his own abilities. Kindle Flame, of course, because he's a fire caster. Fire Breath is a fire breath. It's not much to be said there. I have my issues with breath attacks, but his is okay. Flame Incarnate gives some melee damage reflection, although that's not very good on a single target. Typically you want to apply this to like an infantry unit where multiple models are getting hit constantly. Having it on a single model doesn't really do much. And Eruption is a nice little explosion he can pop around himself in case he's got some like light infantry on him. Rag Banner, Spectral Leadership buffs as well, and the Tenderizer means he hits really hard. He already does hit pretty hard, 48 melee attack for a quote-unquote caster, along with 430 armor-piercing weapon strength. Pretty good. So as a whole, if you're bringing a hero caster, you probably want to bring the Firebelly. And it should be noted that the fact that he's your only source of fire, and as an extension he's only source of magic damage that you can apply to other units, does make him quite important in some matchups, and he'll be even more important when Mortal Empires releases. There's so many factions that are weak to fire and weak to magic that this guy will be a staple in, I feel like, in most armies. Even if you have to bring like a Law of the Great Maw in your Slaughtermaster, you still probably want to bring a Firebelly in some matchups. But we'll have to see how that all turns out. As it stands, going through it, so with Cathay, Miao Ying is the best. In Ogres, it's really close. Honestly, all four of these guys are pretty close. Yeah, I'd say the Tyrant just isn't. I'd have to say either Scrag or the Slaughtermaster of the Great Maw. Those two are really interchangeable, but I'd say those share a top spot. In terms of best hero, can't really do it with Cathay because there's only two of them, but it does go to the Alchemist. And with Ogres, it's probably the Hunter and it's probably the Firebelly. Honestly, the Hunter's nice, but the Firebelly just provides such a unique thing for Ogres that it's really needed in some matchups, and it will be even more needed in the future. Alright, well, with that leadership covered, we will have a look at some replays. I made some here. There's some quite good ones here. Let's have a look. See. Should we start with? I think we start with. What do I have? I actually don't have that many Ogre ones. Ogres, my lord. I didn't make that many Ogre replays. No, I could have sworn I had another Ogre. Oh, there's one down here, I suppose. Even if they're out of date, I'm sure it'll be fine. Let's take a look. Was it this one I played? I can't even remember some of these. I'll just use this one for now. Start off with a nice thematic Ogres versus Cathay, because that's what we're doing right now, is Ogres versus Cathay. Now, the Ogres versus Cathay matchup, there's a lot of back and forth in terms of what's good and what's not. Of course, that Cathay artillery destroys Ogres, but in the same breath, Ogre infantry destroys Cathay infantry. But then in the same breath, Cathay has a lot of missiles that can shred Ogres. But then Ogres have a lot of fast units that can shred missiles. So it's really you're not getting like it's a back and forth, a really quick back and forth when it comes to Ogres versus Cathay. You really have to be on your toes when it comes to this matchup, I think. Also, some of the Cathay cavalry, like, you'll see why. I'll get into it when we spawn in, but not a lot of AP in the Cathay roster usually. So some of the more armoured Ogre units are quite welcome. Alright, so looking at my roster. Ogres, old Scrag's having a little speech there. We've got 3 Noblars in the front, mixed in with, of course, some regular Ogre Bulls. This is the nice, meaty front line. Frankly, this combination here will kill any Cathay front line anytime. Some Manis with pistols in the back, just in case they have like a Terracotta Sentinel or Miao Yang turns into a dragon. Scrag, but Scrag this time with 3 of his spells, I think. I brought the Great Maw, Troll Guts, and Bullgorger. The Maw, of course, being a nice spell to take out Cathay infantry with. Up at the top here, I've got 2 Saber-Tusk pack, along with Mornfang Fists with Iron Fists. These guys are pretty good. These have 100 armor, so even against those pesky peasant long spearmen, they will survive surprisingly long just because of how much armor they have. And the Saber-Tusk pack are nice for running down Cathay, anything fleeing or just any ranged unit or getting into those artillery. Speaking of which, Cathay side, of course, has some of those great cannons, along with plenty of peasant long spearmen, Jade Warriors in case of, Noblar attacks, and some Jade Warrior crossbowmen mixed in with some peasant archers. Up at the top, much of the same thing, they have Miao Ying leading at the helm. Here I've managed to sneak in some of my Saber-Tusk pack to take out those peasant archers. I really do need to get illustrations activated. I'll need to remind myself to do that later. But I snuck up down around here, get into those weak peasant archers, and the Saber-Tusk pack will shred them really quickly. We do also see that the Grand Cannon is firing on my Ogre Bulls, probably the worst target to be shooting right now. Scrag or the Man-Eaters are a lot more expensive and worth shooting at. Up here there's been a bit of a cluster with the Morfang Cav. They are very mixed into these peasant long spearmen, and even though they have 100 armor, you can see that these peasant long spearmen have really actually put the damage on these Mornfang cavalry. Of course, against Jade Warriors, Mornfang Cav will destroy them. Over here the front lines are clashing. We have Noblars and Ogre Bulls clashing into these Jade Warriors, and Scrag mixed in here against some more Cathay infantry. Miao Yang has turned into a dragon, so popping off some shots with the Man-Eater's pistols. Noblars into peasants long spearmen, that will be a long fight, surprisingly enough, just because they both have such little damage output. And in the back here I have spawned in some lead belchers. Lead belchers do really nicely in this matchup just because they can destroy all those like infantry that you can't deal with in melee, so like Celestial Dragon Guard or Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen, or in this case just shooting at Miao Yang does wonders as well. Up here at the top, these guys have been ramming over. You can just see how long these guys have lasted. Like, they were in melee with those Jade Warriors and they completely took them out and barely took any damage. In the back here I'm getting on top of some of these spawned in units. Running down some of these units with my Saber-Tusk pack. Of course, Ogres have their army ability where they need to take out fleeing units, so to have some Saber-Tusk pack in is quite important in any matchup, as long as it's against mortals, because you really want to be running down those fleeing units. You can build up your points so that you can use your abilities. Ogre's pistols still shooting, like looking at how much value they've made already with half their ammo gone. Already 700 value. And they haven't even gone into melee yet. Of course, what's happened here as well is I've engaged him down here quite far ahead, which means he can get reinforcements faster, but it also means I've pretty strongly secured these back 2 points. With this new map, Arnheim, I don't know if a lot of you have seen this new map. This is the one that has a large 2 plateaus. So it has a plateau up here with a single point, and then plateau down here has 2 points down here. So of course your first instinct might be go for the high ground, but then if you go for the high ground you only have 1 point available, whereas these two, obviously there's 2 down here. So it is about making those strategic decisions. Just running my Man-Eaters in here to kill these Jade Crossbowmen. You can also see these lead belters really putting the damage into those Jade Warriors there. This is of course why lead belters exist. And Miao Yang flying up around there, still in a dragon form. See this big group of Cathay stuff wearing. Like, if I could get a Saber-Tusk pack over here, it'd be really good. I could just run all this down and easily secure a full army ability. Over here, one of my Mornfang Cav have been stuck in melee for just a bit too long. This one is running over to support the top here. I have 2 Noblard trappers. Of course, these guys have Stalk, so they don't see him coming. And they will probably win against basic peasant longspearmen. Now these man-eaters here are getting like showered with arrows right now, and man-eaters actually don't have the most armor. They only have 40 armor. So I'm just dropping a heal on those guys so that they stay alive, because they still have like 14 models out of 16. Take a look. What is it? Yeah, oh, 15 out of 16. So yeah, this is the perfect unit to heal. A unit that has all of its models left but has lost a lot of its health. That is the ideal thing you want to be healing. You don't want to be healing something when it's only got 1 model left, unless you have the vampire counts, because you could just resurrect them. That being, of course, single entities are fine. It's just in terms of how many models it has left from its origin. Up here, Noblars have engaged, and also I've rammed in my Mournfang Cav into the back. With that, I mean, these are just peasant longspearmen, and even though they are very solid, they're not going to survive too long. Although you can see they're putting on some pretty good damage against the cavalry here. But they are probably destined to run away, especially because I think I dropped Terror here in a second, which these guys are pretty vulnerable to being spooked. You can see the damage really going in on Miao Ying here. That's from the lead belchers and mostly from the Ogre pistols. Pretty good damage. Peasant cavalry coming in, peasant horsemen. They will just lose to Sabertooth Pack. They'll lose to everything in the Ogre roster, I'm pretty sure. Probably like, except for like Noblars. Doesn't say much. And with that, with those 3 points locked down, yeah, conceded. So if we take a look at the values here, Scrag did pretty good damage wise. Didn't get the most value, but I think it was just fighting a lot of cheap infantry. That goes for a lot of the units in the roster. Is it just because it was fighting a lot of cheap infantry it didn't get a lot of value? Man-eaters though, they definitely got their value back shooting at old Miao Ying. As did the Mournfang Cavalry, they did very well for themselves, considering this one was still pretty much at full health. Ogre Bulls didn't do too well because they were fighting just cheap old basic infantry, and the Sabertooth Pack obviously get a lot of value just because they're running down fleeing units. Little bits also did pretty good. I'm looking at the Cathay roster. Not a lot of value really, anything from there. I mean, the Longspearmen do very well for their cost just because of how the matchup is. But he brought a few too many Jade Warriors, I think, for the matchup. Next up, we'll take a look at Cathay v Cathay. That sounds good. See the full Cathay roster on display. Also, just a heads up that next week we won't be doing we might do like 1 or 2 replays, but what we're going to be focused on next week is I'm going to be looking at the new regiments of renown, assuming they've been added by then. If I was a betting man, I'd say CA will release them on Thursday, so they should be alright for Friday. But next week there will be some new regiments of renown added to the game, and I wanted to do a video to check those out. Give some first impressions on them. If they're all just fucking RORs of blue horrors, I swear. What could be the RORs? I don't know. It's fun to think about. We'll find out more on Tuesday. Alright, so this is a Cathay v Cathay roster.
You know your positions. You know what you have to do.
Thank you, Miao Ying. Of course, in this matchup, there isn't too many large units to be dealing with, but still, great cannons just really good at fighting other great cannons and doing just damage. Very similar to how lead belchers do damage. They just have the firepower and they go through units, so they kill quite a bit in the end. Jade Warriors in the front, 3 units of Jade Warrior crossbowmen with shields, notably, because of course we are fighting against another ranged faction. Want to bring those shields with us. And some peasant longspearmen, just in case he brings some of those flying cav, I forgot their names, Longmer Riders, something like that. Just in case he brings some of those to go and land on their great cannons. My opponent has the Law of Yin, Dragon-Blooded Sorcerer. I have Miao Ying. Here we can see that Vortex spell going down. Just going to do some nasty damage to the Jade Warrior crossbowman. His army only has 1 great cannon, notably, and some crane gunners, along with a very similar layout in terms of Jade Warrior crossbowmen, along with Jade Warriors and peasant spearmen in the back. Although he has spread out a good portion of his forces, he's got 2 units of peasant horsemen coming around the flank here. Probably going to try and get to the back of my army. And some Jade Warrior crossbowmen with shields and regular swords over here. I have deployed some of my own Jade Warriors. A little bit of a mistake here, honestly. I sometimes forget that the fact that the whole strength of Cathay is that they have a ranged unit close to their melee unit at all times. Like, he's done the right thing over here. He's brought a Jade Warrior crossbowman with his Peasant Long Spearman. I would have been better if it was just a basic peasant archer. It's always nice to have one nearby these guys just because they get a huge stat buff. Over here, though, everything's pretty good together, so getting the benefits there. Right now, I'm keeping Miao Ying out the way. Don't want him to get shredded by like all these guns and stuff. So I'm just trying to keep sort of out of the way. Bit of a cannon duel going back and forth. He's only lost 2 of his cannons, so really nice spell here. This is the Law of Yin. I believe it's the, I forget what it's called. It's something like Claws or something, or Talons of Night. It does really good damage, and it's like all AP as well. So against those really armored infantry that Cathay can sometimes struggle to deal with, that does really nice damage. Really good against Corn Warriors as well. Here I've made a Cardinal Sin as well. I've stacked both units on top of each other. I'm just glad he didn't have any spells over here right at the moment, otherwise that would have been really sad. But he does end up flanking around them with Jade Lancers, so big noob mistake on my part there. He has summoned in some Celestial Ancestral Warriors here to try and distract my cannons, but thankfully I got my Spearmen in there to stop him. Of course, the issue is here is that he's getting all 3 of these points pretty much to himself. I am being pushed back. Well, not even pushed back, I just haven't pushed forward as much as he has. He's quickly secured these points, which is probably what I should have done to begin with, is sent small armies to each of these points just to secure them. Just Cathay does a pretty good job holding most of the time. I'm going to rear charge him on this side, but those rear charges are going to get rear charged by the rear chargers of the rear chargers, so yeah. Here's what it is, it's a big messy sandwich. So that flank isn't doing too great. The middle also isn't doing too great. I do have a lot of firepower focused on it, but in terms of melee, it's not going too well. Over on this side, he's just going uncontested pretty much. And right now, it's looking like he's going to triple cap me. Which is not good. Very, very not good. At this point, I probably could have turned Miao Ying into a dragon, just because like it's only with the crane gunners I have to worry about in terms of getting shot. So the shoot would have been fine to change by now, but I think I do change her in a minute. Oh, wait, actually, there we go. Here comes it. He does also spawn a dragon, a terracotta sentinel back there. Not too good when I've got the cannon advantage. Probably could have held that off for a bit. Of course, he wants to fight Miao Ying with it, but the cannon firepower might just be a bit too much. I got some Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen over here. Quite good against some of these armoured Jade Lancers that I'm shooting in the back. And frankly, pretty good melee-wise as well, so they'll hold a gap well enough. Some more Jade Warrior Crossbowmen coming in. Now, of course, with me losing so hard to begin with, it's pretty good because it means I get a big supply advantage. I'll be getting some of those extra supplies as I hit the 1000 mark. Or as he does even, or they. Crane Gunner's shooting point blank right now. Although their lord is very low on health, I think I've been shooting him with as much as I can recently, so. Of course, Terracotta Sentinel is coming in there to fight Miao Ying. Which, with how surrounded she is and how cut off, she probably just want to get out there pretty quickly. Which is again the issue, because it means I'm not pushing the point nearly as hard. All these points are just going pretty much uncontested. Apart from this one over here, which I'm beginning to pull back. He did charge his Jade Lancers into my Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen, but surprisingly they held really well. And I ended up just getting these long spearmen to come around and flank the flankers. Which is quite amusing, just getting the Jade Lancers trapped here. Now, over here in the middle, a lot of his forces have been worn down thanks to my range advantage. But he is still on the point, which is the main issue. I do think I kill his lord in a second. His lord is nearly dead. Miao Ying just cleanly dodging those cannonballs though. Now of course the issue is here is that he's at 2000 points, he has me triple capped and I'm not really contesting as much as I need to. Although here we see these Jade Lancers just get completely surrounded and there's no escape for them. So those are a very dead unit at the moment. Some Logma Riders, these do very well against Jade Lancers surprisingly, they do really nicely, so getting those in there to try and take the point. These Crane Gunners, I do wonder how well these Crane Gunners have done. They had a good time shooting Miao Ying, so they've actually done fairly well, but I could have just walked on top of them and they would have died. Or just moved, that would work too. Getting these Logma Riders into Jade Warrior Crossbowmen. That of course will flatten them. Cannon advantage is starting to turn. Of course he's got another unit of cannons up and it's starting to go back and forth. But he is past the halfway mark now and I still have yet to take a point. Not good. Not good. These Jade Horsemen have been completely like destroyed now though, which is quite amusing. And with that, that is like a good like 1,400 of his supplies just gone. Reduced to atoms. Cannonballs flying in, just wiping out. You can see just how much of his army has been wiped out down here. So now the middle point is actually free of any of his soldiers. He does have some halberds coming in, and he has the Terracotta Sentinel off to the side. But as a whole, this middle point is now free of any enemies. Of course, at this rate, I would need to triple cap him in order to even stand a chance, because he is getting dangerously close to just flat out victory by points, by sheer fact he's so far ahead of me. Now, I do start to bring in a lot more stuff though, because obviously I'm losing so badly, I do get a huge losing advantage. I get like 50% extra supplies, which I am using to call in just about as many soldiers as I can and just run them towards the points. Because if I do manage to triple cap, of course, there's no way he could get points, so I could theoretically win. Yao Ying fighting the Terracotta Sentinel here, mainly just trying to keep it busy while everything else just shoots it in the back. Of course, he is also shooting my Miao Ying in the back, which isn't great. He's got his halberds here, but I'm going to put down a vortex, and that'll do some very nice damage to them. It also slows them down and acts as like a net, so they pretty much can't get through it. They're kind of stuck there, and you have to wait. Which of course gives Miao Ying a chance to get away. Over on this side, it's gone a lot better. He only has a single unit of halberds, which don't have shields, so they'll die pretty quick to the two peasant archers that are there, and that point is pretty secured, so there's one. On this side, I've routed most of his army. He seems to only have a unit of Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen coming up, which I should just be able to run into with some melee units. So this point down here is secured. I think I do also call in some reinforcements for that area as well. And here in the middle, he only has his Terracotta Sentinel, which even though it's big and scary, it has no capturing. Well, it has a little bit of capturing capacity, but not enough to contest two units of... Even if they're half dead, that's enough to just contest the point. So that's two of the points captured, but he is really close to winning. If I can capture the third one, of course, we could see a turn of the tide. Because I've just had such a point advantage, it will allow me to solidify a position on each of the points a lot better than he could. Which could see quite a bit of a turnaround, if I'm able to maintain it.
I call it winner loses.
No, look, it's like us. You call it that I lose, do you?
I mean, I know you wouldn't show a losing game, would you?
No, I mean, he is at 4,770 points now.
Yeah.
4,790 points. He is only 200 points away from victory, but I have triple capped, so he's no longer gaining points. Miao Yang fighting Terracotta Sentinel here, just trying to take it out with the Logma Riders. Over here I've got the Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen engaged, just so that the Logma Riders can get in and tie him up without getting shot to pieces. On this side is looking a bit dangerous. This side is looking a bit undermanned. It's probably the weakest of my point. This point over here is really solid. It's got like 5 different units on it. And the middle point is good just because of how I can move stuff to it quickly. And it also has some pretty good strong units on there already. And he also, because I've had such a huge supply advantage, he just can't keep up. One thing I have noticed is that I think at this stage of the battle I ran out of units to summon. So what's a good idea to do if you run out of units to summon? It's to recall some of your really damaged units and then resummon them at full health, full vigor. Because I mean, why wouldn't you? If your unit's basically dead already, you may as well resummon it in. It is a problem that mortal factions have. Of course, when you have demons, they disintegrate and you don't have to worry about that. But when it comes to mortals, they might run away and come back, and then you can't resummon them. So, something to keep in mind when you're dealing with mortal factions like Cathay and Ogres and stuff. Mainly important for Cathay and Kislev because they're missile factions as well.
Resummon that cannon that has no ammo.
Yeah, I think I do that in a second. It is of course very close. I do summon some extra units over here. I'm just trying to solidify all the positions at once at the moment. Because I think he's starting to go over here when he's got 2 units of cavalry, but it is just Jade Lancers and a Peasant Horseman, so I don't worry about too much about it over here. Over here is where my lord is right now, so I'm obviously a bit occupied. My lord being... I think at this point I did run out of magic though, so... It's really just the terror that she applies, which is the main selling point for her right now. Looking around, it's looking like... The thing is, if he captures one of my points, I might lose at this point. I probably will lose, actually, because he's only 200 points away from victory. So I really have to keep on top of things in terms of if he manages to capture a point. The main contender is over here. At this point, he actually does have the superior weight, because he threw 3 units of cavalry over at my mostly ranged unit side, so... This side is looking pretty surrounded, although they do have some longbow riders to try and tie it up, but they have no capture weight, so because they're flying units. So right now he is taking the point. I do have Jade Warriors quickly coming in there to secure it. It's close. My lord is so far away, so there's no terror. It's just down to the battle on this point. Cathay versus Cathay. Longbow Riders versus like 3 Jade Warriors. I mean Jade Lancers. And a Peasant Horseman. But the thing is as well, is as soon as these Jade Warriors get into the point, they will probably overweigh the Jade Lancers just because they're infantry as opposed to cavalry. So I am just trying to force them in, just try and push past the cavalry and get onto the point as quickly as possible. Oh, and with it is starting to go back and forth up here, but right now it seems to be going in his. It seems to be slowly being lost, but no, it's been gained. It's lost and gained. It's very close on this point, but it is just down to this point at this point. Because he doesn't have time to go over to one of the other points. It's getting too close. It is very close, but it looks like most of his Jade Lancers have been surrounded, and so they've suffered like leadership penalties. So one of them is starting to run, and of course Jade Lancers do not have that much capture weight, so I have begun to regain the point now. I do see some of his Jade Warriors coming down this choke point down here, so I just throw my Jade Warriors in there to slow them down, because not like he can go around them. And with that, he doesn't really have enough time to capture the point at this point. I should stop saying point. But he is very close, but not quite. And that was a very close game. But with that, that is a pretty certain victory for me. Who could have guessed that I would use a battle in which I won? Well, but believe it or not, of all the games I fought to collect replays for this session, I only lost 1. And the only reason I didn't use it is because I didn't bring a caster. So, I just forgot to bring a caster, so I conceded. That's the only one I lost.
Yeah, sure. I believe you.
But I won this one. It's the Rebel Lords of Nanyang. But it says close victory. That should have been like a Pyrrhic. I don't think domination does the whole victory calculation too well. Looking at some values though, Miao Ying did quite well for herself. I think it was mostly those vortex spells. The cannons, of course, paid for themselves. Jade Warrior Crossbowmen will pay for themselves pretty much. Long spearmen, some of them did quite well, some of them didn't. Depends where they were, really. Longbow riders did quite well. The Celestial Dragon Guards did surprisingly well, just because I think they didn't have anything. I think they do quite well in the mirror matchup, because like Cathay doesn't have that much to deal with heavily armored, strong hybrid infantry. It's part of the reason why they don't do too well against Kislev either. Jade Lancers did quite well. Yeah, his side also, cannons doing really well for his side. Crane Gunners did surprisingly good, but I think that's just because I didn't really target them with anything. His Jade Warriors didn't do as well, but they are mostly a melee defense unit, not really damage output. Peasant Horsemen did surprisingly good. I think it's just because they have the peasants to run down. Peasant v peasant. Alright, yeah. I think I shall do one.
With a lot of luck, you would have gotten, yeah.
Yeah, just a little luck. Which one should I think I'll do this last replay, and then that'll be enough for this session, I think. I did say also like us to next week, because you know the Regiments of Renown are coming out next week.
I'm not quite sure if they're really coming out, because
You don't think
they
so?
just said they're gonna be news next week, and they're gonna be releasing a patch in May, I think, that gets them out.
Well, I think when we look back at the post, because when I said they were releasing next week.
They were releasing information, weren't they?
They were also releasing extra information, but I think it was both. Yeah, update 1.2. Our first regiments from our unit pack, and a long list of fixes and improvements come to Total War Warhammer 3 next week. So the update is coming out next week. They just said we will give you news on Tuesday. So I'm hoping it comes out on Thursday so that I can do a video on it Friday. But if it comes out after Friday, then I'll just do a normal replay sessions.
This the Storm Dragon swears to you.
Alright, well, going in with this battle, it is Cathay versus Khorne, and the strong trio that I like to bring in this matchup is, of course, Miao Ying with 2 Terracotta Sentinels, along with some Iron Hail Gunners and some Jade Warriors, one with halberds. Over at the Khorne side, he has 4 units of Chaos Warriors of Khorne, which is fair enough. Chaos Warriors of Khorne, kind of hard to deal with for Cathay. They don't have that much AP anti-infantry. He has some Blood Shrines, which aren't the best. Some Spawn of Khorne and a Exalted Bloodthirster in the sky, along with a bunch of Hounds running around. These are, of course, the inferior Chaos Warhounds, and not the Khorne Flesh Hounds, which you should be using, because they're broken, and they haven't been changed. But they may never be changed. They are just very solid. Maybe they... Do you think they'll be nerfed like us?
Flesh Hounds?
Yeah.
I don't think they have been nerfed, no.
No, do you think they will be?
I mean, I think Khorne would be pretty much, like, not as good without them.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're fine in the roster, because the roster itself is not that strong, because Khorne is... I mean, Khorne is good, but Khorne is, like, the most straightforward faction you would ever find.
It's single-minded. So,
yeah.
You get a bit more of
So
that.
each unit has to be really good.
Yeah. But looking over here, we see that he has planted himself firmly on this side of the map. Thankfully, he's just sort of giving me this side. He has got some of his Warhounds over here. Thankfully, they're not Flesh Hounds, so these Jade Warriors will just tear them to shreds. Over here, we have the Terracotta Sentinels engaging with the Bloodthirster. And they are getting Wrath of the Storm as well from old Miao Ying. Needs some extra melee attack. Miao Ying is also getting swamped by some Spawn of Khorne though, which isn't too good, but should be able to hail some iron on them.
I don't think that's a very good fight for him.
For who? The Bloodthirster?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not a great fight for him. Although, no, he's not anti-large, is he? It's the regular one that's anti-large.
It's Exalted one. The other one is anti-large.
The monster variant, the Lord variant. Here we can see just how nice these Talons of the Night are, like how nicely they do against those Khorne Warriors. It's very nice for dealing with those armoured infantry, which of course they do typically struggle against Cathay. Iron Hail Gunners hailing iron into those Spawn of Khorne. Although now the Bloodthirster has gone for Miao Ying. Terracotta Sentinels are a bit isolated. I do have halberds here just in reserve to go deal with them just in case. I did mainly bring halberds because they are actually pretty okay in this matchup. Khorne has a lot of large and the Khorne is almost entirely armoured as well. So halberds are actually a fairly decent choice. Here we see the Blood Shrine walking, just zipping on through. Not doing a lot of damage considering those are peasants with guns, but you know, it's not a very good chariot, frankly. I hate to be harsh, but it's not. Over on this side, I've got pretty well secured because he only has some Chaos Warhounds. Longbow Riders chasing off these Chaos Warhounds as well. This middle area being held really nicely with the Terracotta Sentinels is part of the reason why they're just so good in this matchup. They're big, meaty, heavily armoured, armour piercing, magic damage with harmony on top of that. Of course, I can't really get a ranged unit close enough to them right now, but very nice unit. Terracotta Sentinel is very strong. There's a reason they got S-tier. Can't remember, what did we put Longbow Riders?
I mean, the main use is, in my opinion, killing Furies.
Well, yeah, but it's a pretty damn good use.
Units. I think they're a bit too expensive for what they're supposed to do. Like, they're good at the moment because they kill Furies, but they're also like 3 times as expensive as a Fury, so they
it's true.
Kill them.
They are quite nice fast response. I did put them in A tier, but
yeah. But if you would have like any other flying unit, you would have probably cheaper, maybe.
Yeah, to be fair, if Cathay had access to Furies, they would never bring Longbow Riders probably. So That is probably a fair point.
Or like a anti-large version that's slightly better in combat, you would probably pick those.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I know Zinch roster was a while ago, but I really want Doom Knights to get changed. I want Doom Knights to be good. I want to use them, but they're not good. They're
Can use them, Willow. You could just bring suboptimal units.
No, but the thing, look at them. Let's look at Doom Knights. They're not anti-large and they're not armor piercing, but they have big fuck-off halberds in their hands. So what logic does that make?
Yeah, but they should be anti-large. But
they should probably be armor piercing as well, frankly.
Yeah, buff the easy thruster because it's not already annoying enough.
I'm just saying, buff Doom Knights, okay? Just the Doom Knights.
Yeah, and then nerf Blue Horus. Like,
how do you nerf them, honestly? Like, frankly,
half their ammo, half their model count.
That's not even enough. That's not even enough. Actually, model count would be enough, though.
Like half their model count.
Yeah, that would. Yeah, we know how that did to Vampire Coast. So it hit them pretty hard.
Yeah, because you couldn't figure out how to use Coast afterwards.
Can't wait for Mortal Empires to come out, and I'll use Coast again. Coast and Zinch on the same team. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Honestly, I thought about Mortal Empires, and probably a lot of or tournament players say counts will be pretty much overpowered, or not overpowered, but really, really strong. I think this is the time for Nurgle to shine.
Yeah, I mean Nurgle would do very well against counts.
I think Nurgle would just absolutely hard counter counts because you win with assassinating or shit. Like Nurgle needs some anti-large, like one unit that has anti-large, and it will absolutely eat counts for breakfast probably. But anyway.
Yeah, Mortal Empires is always, it's nice to think about. I mean, they might make some changes and stuff. I doubt it, but maybe. Also, there's going to be 4 new lords with Mortal Empires as well, so God knows how that will shake it up.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the mess that will be in Mortal Empires. I want them to release it early for multiplayer, but I don't think they will.
No, they're not going to do it. Like, I think I've heard so many big YouTubers who've been pretty much begging them to release it, and they just said no.
Why? Why?
I think it's just because they had the issue with the code between 2 and 1.
Right.
I think it's just they can't do it. Like they released, there was that mod that did it, but I think that had some issues.
Yeah, I guess. I'll wait then patiently. Anyway, looking back down at this battle here, more Warhounds, which, you know, would be expecting to see some Flesh Hounds here. Chaos Warriors, Khorne with dual axes, quite nice in this matchup probably. Probably one of the few matchups they are nice in. They don't have shields, but they do shred infantry. And another Bloodshine, amazing. Yeah, frankly, the main issue here is he just hasn't contested any of the points nearly as much as... He's put a lot into this one, and then he's lost. So, not too good. Khorne has its ways...
Slot get beaten up horribly, and...
Yeah.
Like, 3,000 gold.
Yeah, there's a lot of gold. How much are the Blood Thrones again, the Blood Chariots?
1,000 something, yeah.
Yeah, they're way too expensive. They really ought to be like the cheap single entity, like the Snow Leopard thing. Or Kislev.
Honestly, they wouldn't even be good.
I mean, if they were like 600 gold, maybe?
I don't think so, because they don't do damage. And Khorne needs to do damage quickly, because that's the only thing that he can do.
They do buff damage, slightly.
I mean, actually, probably the explosion has done more damage to you than...
Yeah, the little explosion it gives off when it explodes.
Anything else.
God, that's what we've been missing. Only Vampire Coast has access to like a suicide unit. If you don't count the entire Skaven roster.
I would love it if half of the unit in the Skaven roster has a chance to explode.
Would you though?
I mean, with my luck, probably
It'd be
not,
funny, but also you're just going along and then boom.
No, just like you do damage and like the damage gets buffed by like 500%, but the unit explodes. Balance it and it would be fun.
Maybe make it a campaign-only thing. I mean, it is a campaign-only thing. It's called mutations.
To finish the campaign.
Oh yeah, have you heard about some of the movements they're going to do for Mortal Empires? They're going to move lords all over the place, apparently.
Nope.
Apparently, fucking Nakai's going to start off one. Which I think is
makes
appropriate.
sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's really his entire lore. I'm pretty sure he only fights elves in the lore. Like, exclusively elves.
I mean... I think he gets killed by elves a lot, but...
Damn.
He's also stuck for like 6,000 years in the Waystone, so.
Right, well, this battle is pretty decided, honestly.
The Kai and the Law like get kind of almost killed by Teclis.
I think he got killed by Teclis, Tyrion.
Teclis and Tyrion at
And
the
also
shrine,
Malekith,
and then
also fucked him, didn't
he tries to fuck with Malekith, and Malekith just says, haha, laughs and banishes him.
What a loser.
Or something, I don't quite remember.
Anyway, with that last replay, I will be calling it there for today. Tune in next week with some more replays, and hopefully Regiments of Iron I'll get to review, because I'm quite excited for them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week.